The comm system buzzed like an angry wasp at 3:47 in the morning. I jerked awake in my cramped bunk aboard the Lucky Strike, our little salvage ship that had been my home for the past 15 years. My name is Jake Morrison, and I make my living pulling valuable scrap from dead ships floating in the emptiness between stars. Most people think salvage work is glamorous. They imagine us finding treasure ships loaded with gold or discovering alien technology worth millions of credits. The reality is different. We spend weeks floating through the dark, searching for anything worth selling. Broken hull plating. Damaged engine parts. Sometimes, if we're really lucky, a navigation computer that still works. Lisa's voice cut through my sleepy thoughts. Jake, you need to get up here right now. I had worked with Lisa for 8 years. She never panicked. Never got excited about anything. Her voice stayed calm when pirates tried to board us last year. She kept working when our life support failed and we had 6 hours of air left. But now? Now I heard something in her voice that made my stomach clench. Fear. I pulled on my worn coveralls and stumbled through the narrow corridor to our cockpit. The ship felt different somehow. Quieter. Like even our engines were holding their breath. What's got you so spooked? I asked, sliding into my pilot's seat. Lisa pointed through the front window. That. Floating in space ahead of us was a Kethmori battle cruiser. These ships were massive, 3 times longer than anything humans had ever built. This one should have been a twisted wreck. Instead, it looked perfect. Brand new. The hull gleamed under the distant starlight without a single scratch or burn mark. Sensors show the engines are still warm, Lisa said, her fingers flying across the control panel. Life support is running. Artificial gravity is online. Everything works perfectly. So where's the crew? I asked. Gone. Just, gone. No life signs anywhere. I stared at the huge ship. In 15 years of salvage work, I had seen plenty of ghost ships. Usually, you could tell what happened. Battle damage from weapons. Hull breaches from accidents. Signs of fire or explosion. This cruiser looked like the crew had just vanished into thin air. Run a deep scan, I ordered. Check for anything unusual. Lisa's hands moved across the controls. Her face went pale. Jake, there are more of them. A lot more. The sensor display lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of ships floated in the darkness around us. All different sizes. All perfectly intact. All completely empty. My mouth went dry. What kind of weapon could do this? Remove entire crews without damaging their ships? I don't know. But whatever happened here, it happened recently. These engines are still cooling down. A chill ran down my spine. We were alone in deep space, surrounded by ghost ships whose crews had somehow vanished without a trace. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run. Fire up our engines, I said. We're leaving. Now. But as Lisa reached for the engine controls, our comm system crackled to life. Static filled the cockpit, then cleared to reveal a human voice. Male. Calm. Speaking perfect English. Attention all vessels in Sector 7G. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Please maintain your current positions and prepare for contact protocols. My blood turned to ice. Marcus Webb. I knew that name. Every human child learned about Captain Webb in school. He commanded the Third Fleet during humanity's war with the Kethmori Empire. 300 years ago, his entire fleet vanished during the Battle of Kepler's Star. The official record said they died as heroes, buying time for civilian evacuations. But here was his voice, speaking to us across the void like he had never left. That's impossible, Lisa whispered. He's been dead for centuries. I stared at the comm system, my hands shaking. If Captain Webb was alive, if the Third Fleet still existed somewhere in the darkness between stars, then everything we knew about human history was wrong. The transmission continued. We've been monitoring your salvage operations, Mr. Morrison. We need to talk. He knew my name. A man who should have been dead for 300 years knew who I was. Lisa grabbed my arm. Jake, we need to get out of here. Whatever's happening, it's way beyond anything we can handle. But even as she spoke, our sensors detected new contacts. 3 massive shapes were dropping out of hyperspace around us. Warships. Human warships with designs I had never seen before. They moved with deadly grace, positioning themselves to cut off any escape route. The largest ship opened a comm channel. Through the static, I could see a bridge that looked like something from a museum. Men and women in old-style military uniforms worked at control stations that should have been obsolete centuries ago. Captain Webb himself stepped into view. He looked exactly like the portraits in our history books. Tall, gray-haired, eyes like winter storms. He wore the blue uniform of the old Terran Navy, complete with medals I recognized from museum displays. "Permission to come aboard, Mr. Morrison," he said. It wasn't really a question. I looked at Lisa. She was staring at the display with wide eyes, her engineer's mind trying to process what she was seeing. "This changes everything," she whispered. I nodded. Because if the Third Fleet had survived, if they had been hiding in deep space for 3 centuries, then the real question wasn't where they had been. The real question was what they had been preparing for. And why they had chosen now to reveal themselves. The docking tube sealed against our hull with a soft metallic ring. In minutes, we would meet a man who should have been dust and legend. A man whose return could mean humanity's salvation. Or its doom. The airlock cycled open, and Captain Marcus Webb stepped aboard our little salvage ship, carrying with him the weight of 300 years of secrets. Something was wrong with our jump to hyperspace. Instead of the smooth transition we were used to, it felt like we were pushing through thick mud. Our little salvage ship shuddered and groaned as the engines fought against some invisible resistance. Lisa gripped the control stick so hard her knuckles turned white. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air recycling through our cabin. Her pulse hammered visibly in her neck as she wrestled with the controls. "They are still with us," she said, her voice tight with strain. 3 ships. Getting closer. I wanted to believe our sensors were malfunctioning. I wanted to think this was all some terrible nightmare. But deep in my gut, I knew the truth. Those warships had been waiting for us. The moment we tried to run, they had appeared like ghosts materializing from the darkness of space itself. Our communication system suddenly came alive without any input from us. The sound made me jump. Captain Webb's voice filled our cramped cockpit, calm and professional as if he were ordering coffee. "Mr. Morrison, Miss Chen, please slow down and prepare for docking. We have important matters to discuss." My mouth went dry. "Lisa, how does he know our names? Our full names?" She let out a bitter laugh that held no humor at all. "Jake, look at the sensor readings again. Look closely." I stared at the display screen. What I saw made my world spin sideways. The 3 ships chasing us were no longer listed as unknown contacts. Our computer had identified them. It had matched their signatures against historical records that were centuries old. THS Retribution. THS Vengeance. THS Resolve. These were legendary ships. Warships that every human child learned about in school. They had been lost at the Battle of Kepler's star 300 years ago. Their crews had died as heroes, or so we were taught. Museums displayed models of these vessels. Monuments honored their sacrifice. But here they were. Real. Solid. Chasing us through hyperspace. "This can't be happening," I whispered. "Happening or not, they're catching up fast," Lisa replied, her voice cracking under the strain. The Retribution moved alongside us with fluid grace that defied physics. This massive battleship, easily 10 times the size of our salvage vessel, matched our speed perfectly. Through the reinforced windows of their bridge, I could see human figures moving around. They wore dark blue uniforms I recognized from history museums. "Permission to come aboard, Mr. Morrison." The way Captain Webb said it made clear this wasn't really a request. We had no choice in the matter. The docking tube extended from the Retribution's hull and sealed against our airlock with a soft hissing sound. The metal rang slightly as the connection locked into place. In moments, we would meet a man who should have been dead for 3 centuries. Our airlock cycled through its sequence. Green lights indicated a proper seal. The inner door slid open with a quiet whoosh of equalizing air pressure. The man who stepped through looked exactly like his pictures in our history books. Tall and lean, with gray hair and piercing eyes the color of winter storms. He wore the blue-black uniform of the old Terran Navy. Every decoration on his chest was real. I recognized them from museum displays, medals for courage, leadership, and sacrifice. "Captain Marcus Webb," he said, extending his hand toward me. "I apologize for the dramatic introduction, but we needed to make sure you were traveling alone." His handshake was firm. Warm. Completely real. This wasn't a hologram or some kind of trick. This was a living, breathing human being. "You're supposed to be dead," I managed to say. His smile carried deep sadness and exhaustion that spoke of centuries of burden. "Dead is not quite accurate, Mr. Morrison. We've been somewhere else. Watching. Waiting for the right moment to return to the galaxy." Lisa found her voice. "Return from where?" "Every history book says the Third Fleet died at Kepler's star. The entire galaxy mourned your heroic sacrifice. People mourned, yes. But we didn't die at that battle. Captain Webb's expression grew hard as steel. We discovered something there. Something that changed everything we thought we knew about the war between humans and the Kethmori. He activated a small device that projected holographic images around our cargo bay. Suddenly we were surrounded by star charts, battle plans, and ship designs unlike anything I had ever seen before. The alien vessels looked wrong somehow, as if they existed in more dimensions than my eyes could process. The Kethmori aren't our real enemy, Webb said quietly. They never were. They're just pieces on a game board, exactly like we were. The real players have been pulling strings for centuries, making different species fight each other while they harvest the chaos for their own purposes. My chest felt tight. What are you talking about? The architects, Webb said, and when he spoke that word, the air itself seemed to grow heavier. They've been watching civilizations rise and fall for thousands of years. They feed on conflict. Every war makes them stronger. Lisa moved closer to study the holographic displays. Her engineering background let her understand technical details that went over my head. These ship designs are completely alien. I've never seen anything like them. That's because they don't want to be seen. They work through other species, manipulating them into believing they are fighting for survival or glory or resources. Webb's jaw muscles tensed. The Third Fleet discovered their base of operations at Kepler Star. We went there expecting to win a war. Instead, we learned we had been fighting the wrong enemy the entire time. The images shifted to show massive structures hiding in the empty spaces between star systems. Ships so large they made our biggest battleships look like toys drifted through the void like mechanical monsters. We've spent 300 years preparing, Webb continued. Learning their weaknesses. Gathering intelligence. Building the forces we'll need for the real war. And now, finally, it's time to take the fight directly to them. Cold fear settled in my stomach like a rock. What do you want from us? Captain Webb's storm-gray eyes met mine. In them, I saw something that made my blood freeze, the absolute certainty of a man who had witnessed horrors beyond imagination and decided to act despite the cost. We want you to help us wake up humanity, Mr. Morrison. The architects are preparing their final move. If we don't stop them soon, there won't be a galaxy left to save. The weight of his words hung in the recycled air of our little ship. Everything I thought I knew about human history, about our place in the galaxy, about the wars we had fought, all of it was wrong. We hadn't been heroes or villains. We had been puppets dancing to alien strings. But now the puppets were about to cut their strings and fight back. Walking into the briefing room aboard the Retribution was like stepping back in time. The walls gleamed with a polish that spoke of 300 years of careful maintenance. Every surface, every control panel, every piece of equipment looked like it belonged in a museum. But this wasn't a museum piece, this was a living warship, preserved and maintained by crews who had never stopped preparing for war. I sat in a chair that probably cost more than my entire salvage ship. Captain Webb sat across from me, his winter-gray eyes studying my face as I tried to process everything he had just revealed. 2 billion people, I said, my voice sounding hollow in the pristine room. 2 billion human beings died in wars that were planned by aliens for entertainment. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood at the control panel, her red hair pulled back in a perfect military style. But I could see the rage burning in her green eyes like twin flames. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced precision as she brought up more holographic displays. The Kethmori rebellion lasted 12 years, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. The Thraki purge went on for 8. The Velen Independence War consumed 2 entire generations. Every single major conflict in the last 500 years has their fingerprints all over it. Lisa leaned forward in her chair, her engineering mind working through the implications faster than mine could. The resource allocation reports never made sense to me, she said slowly. We fought massive battles over star systems that had no strategic value. We signed peace treaties that guaranteed future wars would break out within decades. Understanding crashed over her face like a physical blow. Her skin went pale. Oh God, she whispered. They designed the conflicts to continue. They wanted the wars to keep going. Now you're starting to see the truth, Captain Webb said quietly. The architects don't want to conquer us. Conquest would end the conflicts, and that's not what they need. They want to harvest us. Every battle, every death, every act of violence feeds energy into their machines. They've turned our entire galaxy into a massive engine designed to produce suffering. My hands clenched into fists without my permission. The anger rising in my chest felt like molten metal, hot and sharp and demanding action. How long have you known about this? I asked. 312 years, 4 months, and 18 days, Webb replied. His voice carried the weight of every single one of those days. Do you have any idea what it's like, Mr. Morrison? Watching billions of people die in wars you know you could stop, but also knowing that revealing yourself too early would destroy any chance of ultimate victory. I thought about my grandfather's war stories. I thought about the heroes who supposedly died at Kepler's star. I thought about all the children who grew up without parents because of conflicts that were nothing more than alien entertainment. The rage in my chest grew stronger. Show us everything, I said. Commander Mitchell's fingers danced across the interface. The briefing room disappeared around us, replaced by a perfect holographic recreation of deep space. We were floating above something that made my brain hurt to look at directly. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. A crystalline structure stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. It pulsed with energy that seemed to bend space itself. Smaller stations orbited around it like planets around a star. Ships moved between them with mechanical efficiency. The Nexus, Webb said. The heart of their entire operation. From this base, they coordinate the manipulation of thousands of species across hundreds of different galaxies. All the energy they harvest from our wars powers their expansion into new regions of space. Lisa's voice came out as barely a whisper. How many other galaxies have they infected? Our intelligence suggests at least 50, Commander Mitchell replied. Possibly more. The pattern is always identical. They seed conflicts between species, harvest the chaos and violence, then move on when there's nothing left to exploit. I studied the alien ships moving around the Nexus. Their designs hurt to look at, like they existed in more dimensions than my eyes could process. But I forced myself to memorize their shapes, their configurations, their movement patterns. How do we destroy it? I asked. Webb's smile was sharp as a knife blade. Very carefully. And with more firepower than anyone in the galaxy thinks we possess. You see, the Third Fleet didn't die at Kepler's star, Mr. Morrison. We evolved. We adapted. We learned to fight an enemy that exists partially outside normal space and time. The holographic display shifted again. Now we were looking at human ships, but not like any designs I had ever seen before. These vessels were sleeker, more deadly, incorporating technology that seemed almost alive. We've had 3 centuries to prepare, Commander Mitchell said. 3 centuries to gather allies from species who learned the truth. 3 centuries to develop weapons specifically designed to combat the architects. 3 centuries to plan the most complex military operation in galactic history. The empty Kethmori ships we found, Lisa said suddenly. The ones with missing crews but no damage. That was you. Webb nodded. A field test of our displacement technology. We can remove entire crews from their vessels without harming them, relocate them to secure facilities for debriefing. Most of them don't even realize they were being manipulated. The architects are extremely subtle in their control methods. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. You're asking us to join a secret war that's been going on for centuries. A war that most people don't even know exists. I'm asking you to help us end it, Webb replied. The architects are preparing their final harvest. Every conflict in the galaxy is escalating at the same time. They are building toward a crescendo of violence that will give them enough energy to expand their operations into nearby galactic clusters. He leaned forward. I could see the weight of 3 centuries in his storm gray eyes. This is our one chance, Mr. Morrison. Our only opportunity to strike before they become too powerful to stop. We need every ship, every crew member, every person willing to stand up and fight for the future of not just humanity, but every thinking species in the galaxy. The anger in my chest crystallized into something harder. Something more focused. Something that demanded action. What do you need us to do? Captain Webb's smile was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Not because it was cruel, but because it was filled with hope after centuries of waiting. We need you to help us wake up humanity, he said. And then we need you to help us go to war. The message burst across every communication channel in the galaxy at exactly the same moment. Hidden transmitters that had been sleeping in the darkness for 300 years suddenly came to life, broadcasting on frequencies that most people thought were long dead. I stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the communications board light up like a festival display. Green lights blinked frantically as responses poured in from across human space. The sound was like rain on metal, constant, overwhelming, beautiful. 17,432 responses in just the first hour, Commander Mitchell reported. Her voice stayed professional, but I could hear the emotion she was fighting to control. Salvage crews like yours. Merchant vessels. Colony transport ships. Even some old military units that never officially disbanded after the war. Captain Webb stood at the massive viewport that dominated the front of the bridge. His silhouette was dark against the star field beyond, hands clasped behind his back in the classic pose of a naval officer. The weight of 3 centuries seemed to rest on his shoulders. "What about the others?" he asked. "The alien species?" Commander Mitchell's smile was sharp as broken glass. Kethmori High Command is in complete panic. 3 of their main battle groups have already sent messages requesting immediate peace talks. The Thraki hegemony is evacuating their core worlds as fast as they can manage it. She paused, savoring the moment. The architect's puppets are finally seeing the strings that have been controlling them. Lisa squeezed my shoulder as she stood beside me. We had spent the past week aboard this legendary warship, watching as plans that had been carefully laid for decades began to unfold with military precision. Across the galaxy, hidden supply depots were revealing themselves. Secret agents embedded in governments and military organizations were activating. Technologies that shouldn't exist were suddenly appearing in the hands of rebel groups who had been fighting architect-sponsored oppression. It was like watching a magic trick in reverse. Instead of making things disappear, humanity was making an entire hidden civilization suddenly appear. "Jake," Captain Webb called out without turning around. "Your salvage ship was one of the very first to respond to our message. Why?" I thought about his question for a moment, feeling its weight. Around us, the bridge hummed with quiet activity as officers prepared for what was coming. "Because I'm tired of being a puppet," I said finally. "My grandfather fought in 7 different wars before he died in the 8th one. My father spent his entire life trying to understand why peace never seemed to last more than a few years. I grew up believing that conflict was just the natural way of things. And now I know the truth." The anger in my voice surprised even me. "And I want to make them pay for every single life they stole, every family they destroyed, every future they burned just for their entertainment." Suddenly, the communications board erupted with urgent warning signals. Commander Mitchell's face went white as she read the incoming message. "Captain, we're receiving emergency reports from the Outer Rim territories. Massive energy discharges are being detected near all the old battle sites. It looks like..." She paused, double-checking her readings. "Sir, it looks like the architects are accelerating their entire timeline." Webb spun around from the viewport. The expression on his face made my blood turn to ice. "Show me everything," he ordered. The main display screen filled with sensor readings from across the galaxy. Points of brilliant light flared up and died as entire star systems experienced catastrophic energy releases. But there was a pattern to the destruction, a deliberate sequence that spoke of cold intelligence behind every explosion. "They are harvesting everything at once," Webb said quietly. "Every world that has ever experienced conflict. Every system that has seen war. They're draining all of it dry before we can interfere with their operations." My throat felt tight. "How much time do we have?" "Days at most. Maybe only hours." Webb's jaw muscles clenched. "They know we're active again. They're cutting their losses and preparing to move their entire operation to the next galaxy." The bridge exploded into controlled chaos. Officers began implementing battle plans they had rehearsed for centuries. Orders flowed across communication channels as humanity's hidden fleet began to reveal itself. Ships materialized out of empty space, emerging from hiding places in asteroid fields and nebulae. Stealth systems that had been maintained for longer than most civilizations had existed suddenly dropped their concealment. "All stations, battle ready," Webb commanded. I felt the retribution come alive beneath my feet. The ship's artificial gravity shifted slightly as massive engines came online. Through the hull, I could hear the deep, thrumming vibration of weapons systems charging with enough power to crack planets. Lisa grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Jake, this is really happening. We're about to go to war with aliens so advanced they've been manipulating our entire civilization for thousands of years." I looked around the bridge at officers who had spent 3 centuries preparing for this single moment. I watched displays showing humanity's hidden strength finally revealing itself across the galaxy. The anger in my chest had transformed into something else: determination, purpose, the cold fury of a species that had finally learned who their real enemies were. "No," I said, feeling the absolute truth of my words. "We're going to war with parasites who made the mistake of thinking we were too stupid to fight back." Captain Webb overheard me and turned to face us. His winterstorm eyes were filled with the kind of resolve that had once built star-spanning empires. "Mr. Morrison," he said with formal ceremony, "would you and Miss Chen do the honor of taking the helm? It seems fitting that civilian volunteers should help lead humanity's return to the battlefield." I felt Lisa's hand slip into mine as we moved toward the control stations. Around us, the bridge hummed with the energy of a warship preparing for battle. But there was something else in the air, something I hadn't felt since I was a child listening to my grandfather's war stories. Hope. For the first time in centuries, humanity wasn't fighting amongst themselves or dancing to alien puppet strings. We were united, focused, and absolutely furious. The architects were about to learn what it meant to prey on a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. "All ships, this is Captain Webb," his voice echoed across the fleet communication channels. "Set course for the Nexus. Maximum speed." I felt our massive warship surge forward, carrying us toward a battle that would determine the fate of every thinking being in the galaxy. The real war had finally begun. The Nexus dominated our view like a massive crystal disease growing in the heart of space. Its twisted geometry bent light and space around it in ways that made my brain hurt to look at directly. The structure stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, pulsing with malevolent energy that seemed to reach out and touch my soul. But what truly stole my breath wasn't the size of their fortress. It was the fleet surrounding it. "Dear God," Lisa whispered, her hands trembling over the navigation controls. "There are thousands of enemy ships out there." Architect vessels moved in perfect formation around their base like a deadly dance choreographed by machines. Some ships were enormous, larger than entire space stations. Others darted around like mechanical wasps. All of them pulsed with the same evil energy that powered the Nexus itself. They seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, shifting and blurring at the edges of my vision. "What are we facing?" Captain Webb asked. His voice stayed calm as stone, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Commander Mitchell worked frantically at her sensor array. 12,000 capital ships, sir. Roughly 50,000 smaller vessels. The energy readings are... She paused, staring at her display in disbelief. "Captain, our computers don't even have names for some of these weapon signatures." The familiar cold fear settled in my stomach. But this time, it mixed with something else. Something hot and fierce. Anticipation. "What about our forces?" I asked. Webb's smile was both terrible and beautiful to see. "Show him everything." The tactical display expanded around us. Suddenly I could see the full scope of what humanity had built during 3 centuries of secret preparation. Our fleet wasn't the few hundred ships I had expected. It was thousands upon thousands of vessels, each one incorporating technology that should have been impossible. Humanity's survivors weren't the only ones the architects underestimated, Webb explained. The Kethmori learned the truth about their wars. The Thraki discovered they had been manipulated. The Velans realized their independence struggle had been orchestrated. Once they understood, they were eager to join our cause. Ship after ship dropped their stealth fields across the star system. The sight took my breath away. A united armada unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen revealed itself. Species that had been bitter enemies for centuries now stood together. Their combined fleets formed a wall of defiance against their common oppressor. "All ships, this is Admiral Webb," the captain's voice carried across our fleet communication channels. I noticed his promotion in the formal tone. "Today, we don't fight for territory or resources or political power. Today, we fight for the right to choose our own destiny." Through our communications array, I could hear responses in dozens of different languages from hundreds of ships. Human voices, yes. But also Kethmori war chants that had echoed across battlefields for generations. Thraki battle hymns that spoke of honor and sacrifice. Velan death songs that promised vengeance. The sound made my chest tight with emotions I couldn't name. Energy spike detected. Commander Mitchell called out urgently. "The Nexus is powering up some kind of massive weapon system." Space itself seemed to twist and writhe as the architect fortress began to glow with hellish light. The smaller enemy ships moved into defensive positions within human precision. Larger vessels began charging weapon systems that made reality itself flicker and bend around their energy outputs. "All ships, implement attack pattern Omega," Admiral Webb ordered. "Remember, we're not just fighting for victory today. We're fighting to ensure our children never have to fight this war." Lisa's hand found mine as she engaged our navigation systems. The Retribution turned to face our ancient enemy. Around us, The bridge crew moved with calm efficiency that spoke of centuries of preparation. But I could see the tension in their faces, the weight of galactic history pressing down on every decision they made. "Jake," Lisa said quietly, "whatever happens in this battle we're all going home," I finished for her. "Every single one of us." The battle began with a moment of silence that seemed to stretch across light years. Two forces that had been moving toward this confrontation for millennia finally faced each other. Then space exploded into chaos as humanity's combined fleet opened fire with weapons that turned the void itself into a battlefield. I watched through our tactical display as our forces engaged the architect ships. Something fierce and burning rose in my chest. These weren't the clumsy, manipulated conflicts the aliens had orchestrated for their entertainment. This was humanity and its allies fighting with clear purpose, with unity, with the cold fury of species that had finally learned who had been pulling their strings for centuries. "Direct hit on the Nexus outer shell," Mitchell reported. But concern filled her voice. "Minimal damage, sir. Their defensive systems are adapting to our weapons faster than our projections indicated." Webb's expression remained unchanged. "Initiate Phase 2. All ships, target the harvesting arrays. If we can't destroy their fortress, we can at least stop them from feeding on our conflicts." The battle pattern shifted as our forces concentrated fire on the smaller structures orbiting the Nexus. Each destroyed array sent shockwaves through the architect formation. Their perfect coordination began to show cracks as their power source was systematically disrupted. But the enemy was learning too. They adapted their tactics within human speed. Architect ships began sacrificing themselves to protect the remaining arrays. They threw their vessels into our weapons fire with the casual indifference of a player moving pieces on a game board. "Admiral," I found myself saying, "what if we're still thinking like prey animals?" Webb turned to look at me, one eyebrow raised in question. "They're used to harvesting chaos. They feed on the energy of conflict and violence. But what if instead of trying to destroy them piece by piece?" I met his winterstorm gaze. "What if we gave them exactly what they wanted, all at once? More energy than they could possibly handle?" Understanding dawned in his eyes like a terrible sunrise. "All ships," he commanded across the fleet channels, "converge on the Nexus. Maximum power to engines. Prepare for collision course." Lisa's grip on my hand became painful. "Jake, what are you doing?" I looked at her, this woman who had stood beside me through everything. I felt something inside me settle into place like the final piece of a puzzle. "Ending this war," I said. "The way it should have ended centuries ago." Around us, humanity's fleet began its final approach. Ships from a dozen species flew straight toward the heart of their oppressor's power. The architect vessels moved to intercept us, but they were fighting the wrong kind of battle. They still thought in terms of tactical engagement rather than the absolute commitment of beings who had finally chosen their own fate. "Energy levels approaching critical," Mitchell reported. Her voice stayed steady despite what we were asking her to do. Through our viewports, I could see the Nexus growing larger. Its crystalline structure pulsed with the stolen power of 1,000 harvested worlds. But there was something else, other ships converging on the same target. Hundreds of them. Each one carrying crews who had made the same choice we had. "This is for everyone they killed," I said quietly, watching as our enemy's perfect formations crumbled under the weight of a suicidal attack they couldn't understand. "This is for everyone they would have killed in the future," Lisa added, her voice fierce with righteous purpose. Admiral Webb's final transmission echoed across all fleet channels. "Today, we choose how our story ends." The collision lit up half the galaxy. Later, the survivors would say that in that moment of ultimate sacrifice, something fundamental changed in the universe itself. The architect network collapsed not just in our galaxy, but in dozens of others. Species across the cosmos suddenly found themselves free to determine their own destinies for the first time in millennia. We didn't all die that day. Enough of us survived to tell this story, to remember the true price of freedom, to make sure that never again would humanity dance to anyone's strings but their own. The old legends called us monsters. The new legends will call us heroes. Both are true. The difference is that this time, we got to choose which one we wanted to be.